Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well today. We are going into the very next module, so we're excited. We're really getting close to the end of our course. Let's take a look at where we are now. So we are in module 12. And so just briefly go over the overview and objectives here. We can see what the course is about. Oops, looks like we have a little bit of a problem here. Let's try that again. Okay, here we are. So we can see from our course level objectives, now we have explained the importance of customer segmentation to create a value proposition, and we will be working on that with our business model canvas, and create a business model canvas that ties to one specific opportunity. So we can really branch out and have lots of opportunities, but we're going to focus on one with one customer segment. So let's go ahead and see what that's all about. We have our module level objectives. We have our activities for this module, and then we have our assignments. I'm going to go over those with you. Okay, so we have the reading. This is the last part of All In Startup, chapters 37 to 44. So you want to complete that work. And then I have the slide deck on the All In Startup, very brief, just go over a few things, some of the main points from the book, and the business model canvas slide deck. And let's just take a look at some of the resources beforehand so we know what we'll be working with. So we have two videos. Okay. We have this first video here, which is Alexander Osterwalder Alexander Osterwalder's version of the business model canvas that he had created, and how to complete that business model canvas. We're going to do a slight variation from that, but you get the whole big picture by viewing this video. Also, here is Alex Osterwalder, and he here is interviewed by Steve Blank, which is an interesting combination there. But it's very important to look at the pains and the gains, and he goes into that specifically as it relates to the business model canvas. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the module 12, where we are. Okay, here. So now we will go over the slide deck of All In Startup and then the business model canvas. And our assignment here for this module is to complete the information from module 12, put that on your exam review sheet. We're at the final exam at this point. And just, I know it's called the final exam, but it's not cumulative. It's just the modules for this last third of the course. All right, so now, and then we have our assignment, and I will go over that with you as well. So let's start with the All In Startup. And so the book, as I know you're familiar with already by now, Diane Cantor wrote this storyline about someone who really needed to go ahead and get into interviewing his potential customers and not having his own bias involved and clouding that information. So what we're going to do is, I'm just going to go ahead and move along. So startups are really about finding customers, right? So we know that, and it's not about building the product. We need to do our work in the proper order. So instead of in the past, we've already learned, you come up with an idea, you build a product, you brand it, and then you find the customers. And our new approach now is to come up with an idea, find those customers who are willing to purchase that product or service. Then once you have found them, build it and then brand it. And there's a lot that goes on between this section and this section, because our customers, when we find our customers, we need to be sure that we have the right product or service. We may need to pivot several times before we actually build that product or service. And we also know that people don't buy products or services. They buy a solution to a problem or a solution to improve their situation. So they're not really looking for the product or service so much, they're looking for solutions. And the book also goes about thinking like a detective, not like a fortune teller. So a fortune teller is like, oh, let's predict the future, what may be. No, you're better off really focusing on how you find out how to create that product or service that customers will pay for. And successful entrepreneurs are really not luck makers. I mean, they are luck makers, not risk takers. So they make their luck. They're very calculating, and they take measures to be sure that they have customers ahead of time before they start building and branding their product or service, right? So they're not just wild risk takers. They make calculated decisions and they create their own luck often. Here's Owen Chase's story, the Rebicycle, right? So we know that's his story. Go ahead and take a look at the website here. You can explore the website a little bit and you can see if he has improved upon since the storyline. You can see that Owen finally started to interviewing the correct customer. He pivoted several times, but his bias got in the way so much during that story that towards the end, he finally figured out how to find the right customer. Finding that right customer is important. All right, so now we're finished with this. Let's go on to the next slide deck, which is the business model canvas. So we're going to develop a business model canvas, and we're going to do it a section at a time, and you will see really how simple it really is to do. It's a visual tool to create and test your hypothesis. Your hypothesis, well, I have this idea for a business. Let me see, is it viable, right? Will customers purchase it? Right, so that's what we're working on. It's much more flexible than a business plan because a business plan has pages and pages of information, and you had really better already found the customer before you create the business plan. It is also often part of a business plan. A business model would be part of the plan, not in replacement of the plan, but we can certainly start our business with the business model knowing that we have customers. So it's a very quick design to show how all the parts fit together. It's like an at-a-glance view of your business model, which is very nicely done so you can grasp the entire concept of the model. So here's an example. We can see all the moving parts. There are all these building blocks in the business model. We're going to be focusing on the value proposition and our customer segment. So we've already done some interviewing, and hopefully we have found our customer segment. And we want to provide some type of value proposition for that customer segment. So now, and then we can fill in the rest of the building blocks, but that's where we start. So now we have the front end. These are the areas where we're dealing directly with our customer, the front end. And then we have the back end, which is the area that we are working in to provide that value for the customer. So our customer segment, as I mentioned, we've already interviewed customers or potential customers to see if we have that customer fit. And so then when we look at our customers, we want to see who are we creating that value for? What does our customer look like? What makes up this customer? And it shouldn't just be a one single line, people between the ages of such and such and such. There's more to it than that. We want to look at that persona and the entire customer. So we want to be very specific with one type of customer, not many different types. If you put in your business model canvas, my customers are, they are the end user of an app, let's say, okay? So the end user of the app, and then we also have a B2B component. So that's a totally different customer segment. So we want to just focus on one very specific customer segment. You may have more customer segments for your product or service, but you should really have a different business model canvas for each customer segment that you decide that you want to work with. But let's focus on one to start with. And so, for example, I had my son and daughter-in-law's company, the Dino Bars. They wanted to work with B2B. Okay, they wanted business to business. They wanted to sell their products wholesale. But they thought we really need to start selling our customers, selling our product to the end customer, the user, the retailer who wanted to purchase it. And we can move into that other customer segment, that wholesale customer, once we've established ourselves and have a proof of concept that people really do want to purchase these Dino Bars. So you can see that you would need a totally different business model canvas for a different customer segment, because everything changes. How you deliver your product, how you relate to your customer, everything changes. And so supplies may change as well. So a lot of things change along the way. So who are our most important customer? Who do we want to start with our business? We can certainly branch out from there. We want to look at certain archetypes, right? We have our persona, and now let's look at archetypes. We want to look at the demographic information, psychographic, geographical perhaps, and behavioral. So let's take a closer look at that. We have here Tom, right? So Tom, his demographic information, we can see height, weight, generation, ties in with his age, right? Or we may want to be specific about his age for that particular customer. Life expectancy, if that's important. He has 2 children, he's married, right? But this is demographic information. You may have more information as it relates to your customer under demographics. Psychographics, what is appealing to Tom? He enjoys new experiences. He's a high achiever. He's pays a lot of attention to detail, maybe an accountant, but he certainly pays attention to detail, enjoys exciting movies. So now we have a good psychographic view of this particular potential customer. Where does he live? He lives in Northeast US. He lives very close proximity to where he works. And he really stays within that same realm, maybe city. We may want to have a little bit more information on the city. Maybe it's New York City, maybe it's Newark. It could be several different places in the Northeast, but it could be a smaller city rather than a large city like New York City. But he stays within that realm. So we may even want to drill down and get a little bit more information on that. Behavioral. So what does he do? He rides his bike to work every day. So he doesn't have a car. His major hobby is reading, and he's an avid reader. He reads 2 books a month. Right. So now when we look at that, how can we think about how we can provide a product or service to Tom and his family? Well, we could look at this situation and we can say, all right, we're probably not going to provide him some traveling information, although maybe he would. He stays in his 8-mile radius area. Maybe some type of a travel might be good for him. So we could look at it either way, finding something that can help him in their daily lives or their within the city, or something to take him out of the city without having to drive, right? Because he rides his bike and doesn't have a vehicle. So we can think about what can we do? We can tie into a lot of his psychographic information to see what we can provide him with for our product or service. But we can look at any different level of his archetype to see how we can tie in. And so when we have our customer, when we want to really be very specific, include the demographic information, psychographic information, maybe geographic if it applies, behavioral. Include that information on your customer segment in the business model canvas. All right, so what we're doing with the value proposition is we're looking at how do we provide value to this very, very specific customer segment. And when we look at the value proposition, we're looking, how do we create that value? What problems or needs do we solve with our value proposition for that specific customer segment? We could want to consider trends, because if you recall, one of the important items to success is timing. So we want to look at trends also and how that might relate to our product or service. We can look at various political, economic, social, technological, regulatory, and the list goes on. So some value propositions tend to be really to a specific customer, and what I had mentioned before, right? So tailor your value proposition to that one specific customer segment. Don't include many different customer segments. One customer segment, you don't need to include several business model canvases with different customer segments. Just start with one customer segment that you can start the business with, and then down the road, a year, 2, 3, whatever it may be, you may add another customer segment, and then you would have a totally different business model canvas. So here we're looking at, the value proposition and that fit for the customer. How are we delivering value to this one specific customer segment? And how do we do that? What is the relationship that we have with this customer? So we're looking at that. Again, this is the front end section. So we're looking at that. We're looking at how we get the customers, right? What are we doing to get them? How do we keep them? And how do we grow our customers? So that's what we're looking at. How do we have a relationship with our customers? Get, keep, and grow customers. So here are some examples. So we could look at, maybe viral marketing, could be a tactic, public relations, maybe some unconventional public relations like guerrilla type marketing. Search engine marketing could be one, search engine optimization at no cost, right? Social and display ads or posts at no cost, offline ads, that could be many different forms, billboards, newspaper ads, it could be many different forms, business cards, handouts, flyers, that sort of thing. Could be many different mailers. And then there's email marketing, very low cost for that as well. Content marketing is another area, mostly online, where the customers get involved with the content of the marketing itself. You're providing content, and then you are having them engage with that content. Okay, and then, it goes beyond that. Engineering as marketing, maybe targeting blogs. If you remember Dan Urban, he wrote a blog for procrastinators, very specific type of person. And then we have business development, direct sales, affiliate programs, trade shows. The list goes on, as you can see, and you can add from that too. All right, so you'll want to consider, just go back, you'll want to consider this and maybe other methods of creating a relationship with your customer, and you want to include that in your business model canvas. Now we're going to look at channels. So when we look at the channels here, is how are we distributing that type of value to our customer segment, right? So how does a product really get to that user? It may be the end user, or it may be just the user or the customer segment. So it depends on the business or that you have created, right? So direct could be, sales, a website, storefront, that sort of thing, direct marketing or distribution. Indirect could be business to business, and then it goes to that final end customer. or consumer. And then we have our revenue streams. Now, the revenue can be a separate model in itself too, depending on how we collect the revenue. But for the most part, we're looking at this as what's the value we're providing to our customer. It could tie in with the way that the revenue stream, the revenue model is generated. But this all ties in together. So we're looking at product line, maybe selling more than one product. Maybe we need to augment our products and offer additional services or additional service products for that. But we could have a product that includes services, or we could have a product that includes additional add-on products. Pricing tactics, if you want to consider a unit of one pricing approach, that is one way to do it. Like, let's just look at cans of Pepsi, the small individual cans. They're sold, you can buy them one can, you can buy a 6-pack, you can buy a case. So it comes in different types and then of units, but the pricing changes with each different unit. Okay, and size. So what is the value here that you're going to, that ties into the value proposition? Is there something that ties in with the value proposition? And you want to consider the margins and the volume. The example of the Coke cans is a good one because it explains it very clearly. One can of Coke, a 6-pack, a case. And then maybe you could buy even more than that. Okay, so now when we look at the back end, so now we've completed the area that relates to our customer and creating value for our customer. Let's look at the back end. What are the key activities that we do to provide this value to our customer? It's all about providing value to the customer. So what does the company do best? What does it do? In some way, what are the activities that they are involved in to create that value for the customer? What type of resources are needed to perform those activities? And then our resources. So when we look at those resources, we can look at what does the customer what does the company need to provide that value to the customer? Financial resources, perhaps, physical resources. If you have a brick and mortar establishment, well, certainly you need buildings and you need tangible items. Human resources, maybe key employees. Maybe there's intellectual property involved. Perhaps you have key suppliers if you have a product. And then we have key partnerships on the back end again. So certainly no entrepreneur does it alone. Oftentimes entrepreneurs have strategic alliances, joint ventures, mentors, advisors, and the list goes on. So if you recall from Quasi Quilt, how important it is to have other people working together, teaming to make something work. Very rarely does the entrepreneur work completely alone. And then the cost structures, that's broken down. So what costs, what operating costs do you need as opposed to variable costs? Variable costs. We'll cover this in the module under finances and accounting. So we'll go over that brief basic information there. But when we're looking at operating costs, we're looking at what does it cost us to put our lights on in the morning, and we have to pay every single month or week or whatever it may be for our business to run. Those are the operating costs. Those are the fixed costs. They're called fixed or operating costs. And then the variable or direct costs are usually associated with cost of goods. Each item sold has costs associated with selling that item, like shipping, for instance. If you don't sell the item, you don't have to have the shipping costs. But if you sell it, you have a shipping cost. You may pass it on to the customer, but you may not. So that's an example of that. So you want to consider what costs you would have. Certainly the fixed operating costs that you have to start with. So you would need that information. Okay. Again, some of the other thoughts are how much do you need to invest into each channel if you're having more than one channel of delivery? How expenses, how expensive are the key resources that you need? And how much can you actually bootstrap? We covered bootstrapping. Are there ways that you can start lean and stay on the lean side as you're growing? So our interactive design is the phase one is develop the business model canvas. Phase two is the test the value proposition with customers. Now we've done our interview, but we've done some preliminary information to gather data as to what is the problem that they may have on a specific topic. But now we're going to introduce what we have to see if this might be something that our customer may find appealing. So we may need to actually go ahead and develop a prototype of a minimal viable product to put together to show our customer to see if they would be interested in it. Now, if it's an app, you would do a diagram or you do something, it doesn't have to be a very well thought out prototype, but we want something to show our customer to see, is this something that they would be interested in? And here, if not, we need to pivot. And if so, then we can move on. And oftentimes we are pivoting several times before we move on, which is fine because it's part of the process. So when you position yourself like, okay, I'm not expecting complete success the first round, very rarely does that ever happen. Usually we are making changes and pivoting along the way. Okay, so does each part of the business model make sense as a comprehensive whole? So we want to take a look at it and say, okay, I pulled it apart. Does that make sense in itself? So we want to look at that closely. So the entrepreneurs are searching for a repeatable business model. Steve Blank's comment, right? And how much can be bootstrapped? So we want to think about that too, instead of just pouring a lot of money into something and then not knowing if it will actually work. Here are some problem experienced by customers, right? So something to think about. Lack of time is certainly an issue for people. And if we can find a way to relieve that pain, that would be wonderful. Lack of money is another. So we can find a way to create value there. Lack of skills, and then lack of access. So these are some of the key points that are problem areas that customers would like assistance with. So identifying our target market. So we want to look at specific things here for our customer segment, right? Maybe age, gender, income may be important depending on what you plan to charge for your product or service. Maybe their location, perhaps even their nationality may even be part of the equation. Is their profession or their line of work important? Are they risk takers? Are they spontaneous buyers? Early adopters, as opposed to the Y segment with Simon Sinek, as to are they the early adopters or are they the laggers, right? So that's important to know so you can position your product or service. Traditionalists, trendsetters, whatever it may be. These are some items that you can consider as well. So our customer value proposition, it's really the most important part of the business model because it's how we deliver value for our customer. It must somehow be a little bit better than our competition. Somehow it needs to have some type of differentiating feature or something related to it that is different from the competition. And certainly when we look at it and put our information on the business model canvas, it helps us to see that better. It needs to be measurable somehow within monetary terms, right? And sustainable. Of course, you want your business to sustain. You want it to continue to work. Not sustainable as in green, although it could have a green element to it, but financially sustainable. And that's the end of that. So I hope you enjoyed that section. Let's see, we don't need to save that. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is take a look now at completing the module 12 component for the financial, for the review sheet for the exam. And then let's take a look at, you know what, let's take a look at the business model canvas. So when we look at the business model canvas, we can see here that this is a Word doc, and we want to start with our value proposition, put in one value proposition, one thing that your business can do to provide value to this one customer segment. Okay, and then of course and this document, you want to keep it on one page. It can expand slightly, but just delete any extra lines that are here. Specifically, when you go into channels, it starts to move the screen down because it's a dynamic document. Please keep it to one page. Just delete the extra empty lines as you progress down the page so that it will stay on one page, and including the disclosure. Everything should be on one page here, not carry over to 2 pages. So you want to complete this in good detail, but only focusing on one value proposition, one customer segment. And I'm looking forward to viewing these, your business model canvas. So thank you so much, everyone. Hope you enjoy completing module 12, and we will move on to the next module.